All righty. Welcome everyone to the Adelante Progressive Caucus monthly general meeting. My name is Colton Dean, the chair, and tonight we have two guests with us. They are candidates for the DPNM vice chair. We have Mr. Cam Crawford and Augustine Montoya. Um, Before we get started, I just want to say a few things, and then we'll have each candidate introduce themselves for 5 minutes. After that, each of the Adelante board will ask a question. Um, we'll go for about 2 minutes per question. I'll keep a timer. I'll be strict about it. I'll start nagging if we go over 2 minutes, but if you need a little bit more time, it's fine. Just finish your thought. Um, and then after the board has asked all the questions, we'll open it up to the general audience. So just to get started, I just want to express kind of where I feel I am as a Democrat these days. I'm not happy with the election results. I'm not happy with who the president is, but we in New Mexico are doing very well. And I really hope that we can keep perspective as to how well we are doing in New Mexico. We've maintained Democratic representation in the House, in the US House and Senate, in the state legislature, and the governor. Um, and then the major cities have Democratic uh, majorities. So, although we all are on the same page on the federal level, the truth is there's not much we can do about it at the moment. But we can focus on state and local. And I've tried to encourage everyone to focus on state and local, and that's what this is about, the DPNM, the NM and D part. And I think what we can channel that energy into building upon what we have and keeping what we have. Uh, so I hope that whoever is the next vice chair focuses on New Mexico and helps New Mexico and not get carried away by the federal issues too much. With that, I guess we'll just go by alphabetical order, which would be Mr. Crawford. Would you like to go ahead? And you'll have 5 minutes.
Absolutely, Colton. Thank you so much for inviting me and for the opportunity to come and introduce myself to you all. It's good to be here. For those who don't know me, I'm Cam Crawford. I'm 23 years old. I live in beautiful Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I'm a full-time firefighter. And in addition to being a firefighter, I'm also a substitute teacher here in Santa Fe for Santa Fe Public Schools. I'm running for vice chair because I'm a working class man running to rebuild a working class party. We've seen people just like me flee the party by the day. And whether it's young people or people of color or people who make under $50,000 a year like I do, we need to bring them back into the fold because we can't afford to lose them. Colton, you just talked about a lot of the different offices we've successfully held. There's no way we're going to hold those offices if we don't begin to speak to the needs of working people. And so here's how we're going to do that. Number one, I want to make sure that the Democratic Party stands for something and standing for something beyond fundraising. Um, for too often, for too many people, the only time they ever hear from the Democratic Party is when we're asking people for money. And instead of asking people for money, I believe we need to ask people for their ideas. And so I want to bring the same values that I live out every day in the firehouse and in the classroom to a broken and battered Democratic Party that's searching for its identity. And so we're going to do that by making sure instead of being a party of fundraising and asking you for money, we're going to be a party that's about community service. I want to make sure that the Democratic Party is a place where we can do innovative things like hold food drives or hold school supply drives so that you can get school supplies for your kids or that we can volunteer at places like soup kitchens and animal shelters. We need to show people that when you vote for Democrats, that we will deliver free both inside and outside of the ballot box in the halls of government. So that's number one. And then number two, we need to educate people on what we're doing here in New Mexico. I believe there's a fundamental disconnect with regard to some of the policy wins that we've had here in New Mexico, and then whether or not people are able to make heads or tails of who brought them those policy wins. So, for example, Democrats in New Mexico are responsible for the fact that reproductive health care is still legal here in New Mexico. People don't understand, they don't know that Democrats are responsible for the fact that every worker in New Mexico has 64 hours of paid sick time. People are unaware of the fact that we're making critical investments within the realm of housing. And just today, I read that Democrats and with bipartisan support, we've established a $300 million Medicaid trust fund so that in the event that the federal government decides to gut Medicaid, as they're planning to do, as the Republicans are planning to do, Democrats in New Mexico are going to make sure that we can keep people whole. And so that's exactly why I'm running for vice chair. I want to make sure that we bring people who are leaving us back into the fold by highlighting critical policy wins and by making sure that we stand up for working people wherever they are, whether they're in a red county or a blue county or a large county or a small county or a rural county or an urban county. We have to show up for everyone, everywhere, all the time. We need a 24/7 campaign operation and educational operation to bring folks back into the fold so that they'll continue to vote for us. And then we can continue to build on some of these really important policies. So that's why I'm running for vice chair. Again, my name is Cam Crawford, and I'm looking forward to the conversation tonight.
With a minute to spare, that's appreciated. Um, if you have anything to add, you still have about a minute.
Yeah, I mean, I just firmly believe that, at this critical moment, people need to hear from Democrats about what we're going to do to be proactive against the Trump administration, what we're going to do to be proactive here in New Mexico. And every email we receive from the state Democratic Party should not be about asking for money. And we need to make sure that the events that we hold are accessible to every New Mexican. No more high dollar dinners. We got to make sure that the working man's party, the working people's party, is truly a working person's party. And we do that by emphasizing and expanding the scope of our operations beyond asking you to put money in our pockets, when in reality, we should be trying to find ways to put money in your pocket. So if there is anything else to add, that's what I've got.
All righty. Let me reset my timer. All right, Mr. Agustin Montoya, you have 5 minutes.
Yay. Well, buenas tardes, Adelante Progressive Caucus. I appreciate you guys so much and for having me tonight. Thank you, Cam, for being here. Thank you for running. I think it's amazing whenever our democracy gives us options, right? I love having an option and the ability for us to vote for people we believe in. So for me, I take a little bit of a different approach, right? Because I do believe that we have to have a service-oriented organization, but we have to be able to pay the bills, right? I think that at the end of the day, palm cards cost money, administration costs money, staff and organizers cost money for us to make a really strong and unified party. So though I don't think that we should be beholden to large donors, I do think that we should have a deep base of grassroots sustainers where we're not asking people for huge amounts of money, but we are asking them to support us so we can invest those dollars into policies that are going to get that money back into the pockets of the working class people. As somebody who was born and raised to a family who made about $12,000 a year growing up, which back then, before like all of the Trump inflation, was a pretty decent chunk of change. I know what it's like. You know what I mean? Whenever I was sick, I'd lay down on our floor in front of our fireplace and I'd look up and I could see the sky through our roof. And those are the experiences I come from. And that's why I'm proud to be running for vice chair of the Democratic Party of New Mexico, because I realize that we do have to be able to keep the lights on at the Democratic Party so we can do those sort of service-oriented things. I'm also running because I believe American freedom belongs to all Americans and not some Americans. And at this moment, when our nation's at such a crossroads, we need a Democratic Party that truly reflects the values, voices, and lived experiences of all New Mexicans. And that's why my campaign is built on a simple but powerful message. Our party, our way. This is more than just a slogan, it's a commitment to a party that listens, acts, and evolves alongside our communities, and a party that works for everyone from our biggest cities to our rural communities like mine here in Tajica, New Mexico, our land grant communities that I champion and am from. And I bring a unique perspective to this role. I am 25 years old, so I'm a little bit older than Cam, but I am also a young person. I'm a Latino, generational Nuevo Mexicano, a member of our LGBTQIA plus person who just got married to my husband. And most of all, I'm a dirt road and rural Democrat. Added to this, I'm also a first generation college graduate, somebody who had to work and literally sleep out of my car so that way I could graduate from college. And so when we talk about the messaging of the Democratic Party, I am the product of our democratic values. Quality education, making sure that people can put food on the table and that their kids are not having to go without because we believe in free school lunches and programs like these that the Trump administration and so many on the Republican side of the aisle want to take away. And so I've also added to my platform a very important thing, identifying systems, patterns, and gaps so we can make quality investments in infrastructure and training. Because without quality systems, without that quality infrastructure, we cannot get Democrats to the polls, we cannot get people registered to vote, and we cannot do the brass tacks of what it is that the Democratic Party stands for. I work for the government in my official side, which I'm not speaking for today, but that I do have experience from, and that's as the executive officer to Bernalillo County. And in this position, I've helped literally build roads, build bridges, build quality infrastructure. And so I bring that experience here to the Democratic Party. So as vice chair, I can focus on those nuts and bolts so our chair can do the job of championing our democratic values and wins. Because we have to have a vice chair who's going to be able to pay close attention to that strategic planning, as well as how we bring our caucuses closer together, coordinate a lot better together, and also make sure that our county parties, whether you're in rural New Mexico or urban New Mexico, have the tools that we need to succeed. Now, in saying that, I want to make one thing clear. Finding the tools and strategic planning does not mean that the Democratic Party comes into your organization and tells you what to do. What it means is we listen to the strategies that have worked for you, we invest in those strategies, we make sure that they are a part of our plan for success, and we work to fill the gaps between the Democratic Party of New Mexico and you. One thing, and it's a super simple thing that happened last cycle, was signs. Yard signs, getting those out into rural New Mexico. We didn't have the pipeline and the infrastructure from DPNM to get those signs to our rural communities and show the force that the Democratic Party does have in rural communities. Now, lastly, I'm going to close out with this. In being a rural and dirt road Democrat, I understand what it takes to organize in our rural communities. I'm a party chair from rural New Mexico, and I'm somebody who's here to get this job done. And so I ask for your support. If you want to learn more, go to www.anm, the number 4nm.com. I'll put it in the chat. Give me a call, let me know, and I hope to earn your support for vice chair of the Democratic Party. My name's Agustin Montoya, and I appreciate you.
Thank you, Augustine. Thank you both for that intro. We'll now go into questions. My first question, the first question I'll pose to both of you. I got involved about 7 years ago in state and county politics, at the delegate level, then the ward precinct level, and then SCC. And over that time, I've participated in passing, helping to pass certain platforms and resolutions. And in that time, I've observed that the Democrats we elect don't always follow through on representing those platforms and resolutions very well. So if we elect Democrats to office and they don't support the platform and resolutions which ostensibly reflects our values, do we continue to support them as in DPNM leadership? Do you continue to support them? And if yes, then what is the point of having an organized party? And what would you really be vice chair of at that point? I guess since we'll just go back and forth. Augustine, if you want to go first, and then Mr. Crawford.
Yeah, absolutely. So this has been a problem, and I've talked with members on here today, or members that are on here today about this in the past. The Democratic Party is in a really interesting position, right? Because we can't get involved in primaries to support, one candidate over the other, and that's not by necessarily party rule alone. That's also by state statute. So if you look at the Campaign Reporting Act, it prevents us from getting involved in state primaries, giving an object or an item of value to one Democrat over another in a primary. And this is something that we're coming into here with the Democratic Party. We do have a platform and we do need to hold Democrats to account for that. And I think that's where caucuses come into this conversation, right? Doing things like report cards, making sure that we are being loud about where Democrats are or are not standing on our platform. And the DPNM needs to support our caucuses in doing that work. Because, like, for example, with the Veterans and Military Families Caucus, they put out a report card. When I ran for the House of Representatives, they had put out a report card about me and where I stood during the interview. Now, the reason that I think that work is so important is because of the fact that there's a triangle of power, right? Whenever it comes to running for office, and re-elections up at the top. So when we're loud about our messaging, it gives room for other Democrats to come in and elect those candidates out. Now, in saying that, I revert back to the original point that the state statute prevents us from getting involved in those primaries. And so by law, the Democratic Party cannot give money or an object of value to one Democrat over the other. But we can support our caucuses in doing that work and being loud and holding those elected officials to account for our, with regard to our platform.
Crawford?
Yeah, so one of the things that I was really impressed with was actually an action taken by a neighboring state, Arizona, when Kirsten Sinema pretty much reversed all of her positions that she ran on in 2018 and became a wolf in sheep's clothing. The Arizona Democratic Party actually censured her. And so I think that there should be room for people to have their different policy disagreements within the party. However, there's a certain standard that you need to meet if you're going to have the Democratic label, you're going to benefit from democratic resources. And so I believe that if it was warranted, yeah, a censure would absolutely be in order. And ultimately, we should follow the letter of the law, just like Augie said. I mean, if we can't, the law is pretty clear. You know, we're not allowed to support in kind one candidate over the other, or monetarily one candidate over the other. However, I don't believe you should benefit from democratic resources if you're going to spit in the faces of your voters after they elected you under false pretenses. So I believe that when people take policy positions that hurt the Democratic Party and that drive away Democratic voters and dampen Democratic turnout, yeah, there should absolutely be consequences, much in the mold of how Arizona was able to do so with cinema. But ultimately, we should follow the letter of the law, and we shouldn't put ourselves at risk with being non-compliant with state statute.
Okay, Scotty, do you have a question?
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for coming. I know that you probably already know that your job as vice chair is to support the chair. However, also your job is to head the Judiciary Council. And in the last term, part of the problem was that the vice chair's inability to direct the committee and the executive director to handle complaints in a timely manner caused huge rifts in our party. So as the chair of the Judiciary Council, which you will be, how do you plan to address that issue? And I'm going to go to Mr. Crawford first.
So when I took the oath of office to become a firefighter, it's because the people of Santa Fe County paid uh, to put me through training. And then once I was released out into the field, they expect me to do my job. So, Scotty, to answer the question, I'm going to do my job. And if the rules say, hey, listen, it's your job to chair the Judicial Council, we're going to make sure that we provide as much transparency as allowable. We're going to make sure that we don't keep people waiting. We're going to make sure that people are aware of what's going on. We have to stay on top of this issue. And so, knowing that this has been an issue in the past with regard to transparency and getting things out in a timely manner, it's something that I'm going to make sure I emphasize if I'm elected as the next vice chair. And we're going to work with everyone to make sure that this thing runs like a well machine, and that we don't run into the same issues that we've run into over the last few years.
Thank you. Mr. Montoya, would you please, do you want me to read the question again, or do you have an idea?
If you could, please, I think you broke up towards the tail end.
Okay. You're going to be chair of the Judicial Council. We had problems. We had our previous vice chair delayed things, put things under the rug, didn't want to deal with it, and caused a lot of problems. And then the executive director took over, and I found out through sources that information was hidden from the Judicial Council to make a full disclosure. So how would you address your position as vice chair and chair of the Judicial Council so that it doesn't hurt New Mexicans?
I really appreciate that question. I've had conversations with people about this lack of transparency with the Judicial Council before. And then also, just so you guys know, the article that I was referring to previously about getting involved in primaries is NMSA 1978 1-19-1, just so you guys are aware of that. But for me, in having the conversation with members of that Judicial Council and as serving as a committee assistant to House Energy, Environment, and Natural Resources, transparency is something that we are going to have to work toward to build a seamless system with, right? So if we have a docket, the members of the Democratic Party and the public have a right to know that when they request something of the Judicial Council, that it is going to be published in advance, so that way the public is aware of what the Judicial Council is going through and what it is making decisions on. So that way those meetings are open to the public, so that way everybody can see the proceedings of the council, and also that we have the systems in place within that council to make sure that it's easy to receive those requests, easy to receive those complaints, and so that way it is transparent. What I want to do first is meet with all of the members, develop a steering committee to see exactly what those systems need to look like and how we go about making those publications in a timely order. And in addition to that, when I served for the House Environment and Natural Resources Committee, I was able to work through the system to make that committee transparent and organized. And if I do say so myself, and I have a letter of recommendation about it, I was one of the most organized committee assistants in doing that job. So I want to make sure that the agendas are published in a public place where you all can see them, that you guys have access to the hearings, and so that way you guys are able to see exactly what that council is doing. Now, there are exceptions. There will be things that need to be discussed in private within a certain exception that it has to be private. But other than that, I think that the public should have access to these hearings. There is no reason that things should be happening behind closed doors, especially whenever it comes to adjudicating issues. If the public can't see it, then we shouldn't be doing it.
Thank you.
Mr. Dan, our treasurer, do you have a question?
Yes. Yeah. So this is Dan Fay, treasurer of APC. My question is, the Democratic Party is often seen as engaging with voters in a transactional way, where it focuses on elections but neglecting their needs afterwards. How do you plan to do this? I heard some inklings of this before, but figured I'd bring up the question again.
So I think it's my turn. Am I right, Colton? You're muted.
If we're going back and forth, then yes. And then I'll go
Okay.
see.
Are you okay? Are you okay with that, Cam, or do you prefer to go first?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. So for me, to prevent this from being a transactional situation where we show up every 2 to 4 years just asking for your vote, I think that we need to be organizing and deep canvassing, deep phone banking, deep community events throughout the year, right? And we need to coordinate with our campaigns who get volunteers involved that one cycle and bring them back into the Democratic Party so that way they can continue that organizing. But what it also looks like is working with nonprofits who can do this work to expand our access to capital. So we're actually bringing value to those working class people without actually having to spend from the coffers of the Democratic Party, because we do not have the funds to be able to to use the example that Mr. Crawford used, to go out and purchase those food boxes. But we do have community partners who can help us prevent this from just being a transactional relationship with the voters.
Okay, Mr. Crawford.
Yeah, so I mentioned it in my opening. For too many people, the only time they ever hear from us, the Democrats, is during election season. And when they hear from us, it's asking for money, never really asking what's on their mind. And so, one of the biggest things that I've tried to emphasize throughout this campaign is that we need a 33 county party. And some counties don't even have functioning Democratic parties. There's no way we could be expected to be listening to people and showing up for people all the time, not just during election cycles, if we don't have functioning local parties. And so the I believe the overemphasis on fundraising is an existential crisis that the Democratic Party is going to have to confront. Yes, absolutely. Should we have enough money to keep the lights on? Of course, that goes without saying. However, in this last election, I'm pretty sure Kamala Harris set the record for money raised among by a presidential candidate. She raised $2 billion, and she still lost. She lost the popular vote, and she lost the electoral college. Money doesn't mean anything if people don't like you. The Democratic Party has a 57% disapproval rating. That means 57% of people, when they hear the word Democrat, their skin crawls. We've got to address that, and it's why I emphasize community service. One of the things that I'm very proud of about the Santa Fe County Democratic Party is we have a very robust community service program. And so we are volunteers at soup kitchens. We volunteer at the animal shelter. We volunteer to do litter pickups at the local parks. And so this is part of what I mean when I say people need to know that when you vote for Democrats, yes, we're going to improve your material conditions both inside and outside the halls of government. Yes, we should be for bold progressive policy. We should be for cleaning up the campaign finance system, but we should also be for building a sense of community amongst some of these people who feel left behind. There's people who voted for Barack Obama twice who are now pretty solid Trump supporters. It's because they feel left behind, and it's because the Democratic Party, in its arrogance and hubris, has decided it doesn't need to talk to people unless it's an election year. And when we do talk to people, it's asking them for $10 to defend democracy. So again, we've got to emphasize and go beyond fundraising. Thank you.
No, it's fine. I just want to make sure you finish your thought, but that was um um Carol, I think it's your turn. And then Cricket. You're muted, Carol.
Can you hear me all right now?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
awesome. Thank you so much for coming. My question, I have two questions, but so my first question is well, let me set it up first. So a lot of politicians and other people within the New Mexico Democratic Party have acted in such a way where they see their positions as stepping stones to higher things. And I remember there were issues about that, ranging from Governor Lujan Grisham all the way down to some of the executive members of DPNM. So my question is this: where do you see yourself in the Democratic Party of New Mexico in the next 4 years? Like, it's 2028. Where do you see yourself in the party? Are you planning on staying, or like what do you foresee for yourself in the party? Are you wanting to stay and be a part of New Mexico politics, or are you looking for higher sites? How much? What is your commitment to the party? Thank you.
I think I'll start
Crawford.
with this one. So my goal by when this is all said and done is to have built and grown the Democratic Party. Our job is to win elections, and so there are very important elections that we need to win in 2025 and 2026. And if we get our asses handed to us in 2026, then all this was for nothing. There's no point in doing it. Like if we go the way of Florida or West Virginia or Ohio, but I got a cool title and I got to say that I was vice chair of the Democratic Party of New Mexico for a couple of years. Then mission failed. We didn't do our jobs. So when this is all said and done, I want to be able to say that yes, we brought working class people back to the party because we delivered on bold progressive policies. Yes, we brought people back into the fold after they were sitting on the sidelines because they gave up on the political process. Yes, we contacted people who had never been contacted by Democrats before. Our job is to build and grow the Democratic Party. Who knows what the future holds? But my main point is that no one should be thinking about any of their careers because at this point, if we can't build a sustainable party that's actually palatable to working people, that doesn't have a 57% disapproval rating, that can actually perform with people who make less than $50,000 a year and people who don't have a people who don't have a college degree, who cares about what I want to do or what Augie wants to do or what Manny wants to do? This is about you, and this is about making sure we have a Democratic Party that is strong and bold and progressive, and that elects candidates who are going to reflect the will of the people. So when this is all said and done in 2027, I want to be able to look back and say, yeah, we did some really good work. We brought people back to the party. We did decent fundraising, but ultimately, we brought people back to the Democratic Party who left us and who were searching for an answer.
Cool. You guys ready?
Montoya? Yes.
Cool. So I want to take this one head on because I've had this question asked to me before. Agustin, are you using this to run for public office? Let me be very plain and clear. I have already run for public office, and if I was looking for a place to go and use as a stepping stone, it would not have been the Democratic Party. And the reason for that is not because I don't love our party, not because of the work and the ability to platform yourself for future office, but because this is a thankless job. This is a free job that we're going into where oftentimes when it comes to doing the right thing, one side or the other is going to be mad at you. And it's okay. It's the reality of the job. So I'm coming here to make the most impact. I've been involved with the Democratic Party since 2019. I was 19 years old when I got elected as the youngest county party chair in New Mexico history. And I have been dedicated to this party since then, and I will be dedicated to this party after now. Because the reality is that the Democratic Party is meant to be an institution in the state of New Mexico that, yes, builds leaders, but builds leaders that know what their purpose is, and that is to come and fight for working class people and not be using these positions as a springboard. Because the reality is that I function off of a key piece of advice that I was given by a very near and dear friend of mine. Go to where you're going to make the most impact. And right now, the Democratic Party for me is where that impact is. And I'm going to finish where I started. I have already run for public office, you guys. I have done that work. I do not want to run for public office again until I know that we have a Democratic Party that looks at the whole state of New Mexico and says, we will not leave you behind.
Okay, you have a question?
Cricket?
Oh, I didn't hear you. Okay.
Sorry.
I'm Cricket Courtney. I'm the vice chair of the Democratic Party in Socorro County, and I look forward to meeting both Augustine and Cam at our county convention at the end of the month. Here in Socorro, we had a lot of old Hispanic families that voted Democratic decade upon decade until the last few years where Socorro, a lot of people voted for Trump. What efforts do you plan to take to reach out to reconnect with those longtime Democrats who've changed over and to engage them.
So I think I'm first on this one, Cam. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I think it's you.
Okay, cool. So first and foremost, I just want to say this. I know I said this at the beginning. Thank you, Cam. I appreciate you. I know I get really passionate, and I just want to make it clear that this isn't like a candidate on candidate thing. This is just my passion, and I want to make sure everybody knows that. But when it comes to the Hispanic community, I'm from our land grants. I'm a generational New Mexican who comes from our Mercedes. And so when it comes to reconnecting with the vaqueros and all of our rancheros and all of our Hispanos, I've already started the conversations with the heads of these land grant communities about A, what the messaging needs to be, B, how we work to make sure that we are bringing value to those Latino men. And it's having a conversation that the Democratic Party is not supporting women's rights and LGBTQIA plus rights at the expense of our Latino men specifically, because that's how they feel the Democratic Party is treating them, that we don't understand the value of men in the family. And that because of that, we are selling them out in exchange for LGBTQI plus and women's reproductive justice. Now, in saying that, that does not mean we concede our point, but we communicate in a way that allows for our message to be understood by those Hispanic people like myself. Because here in the state of New Mexico, we have the full opportunity to say, as a Latino man, we understand, but strong Latino men support our women. Strong Latino men stand with all of us. We don't just stand one side or the other. And we don't just say that, oh, because you support a woman, you're not supporting a man. Strong men support their women. And that's the message we need to be bringing to our Latino men.
Thank you. So I think that this last election, if nothing else, served up folks in the Democratic Party a really big slice of humble pie. And for so long, the Democratic Party has taken voters for granted. No, I'm not a Hispanic person. I'm not a Hispanic man. But I am part of a group of people who have long supported the Democratic Party over the years at rates ranging from 90 to 95%. And a lot of Black folks feel like the Democratic Party takes them for granted and only comes around during election season. So here's how we bridge the gap with those long-standing Hispanic families in Socorro County who used to vote for Democrats. I believe that we should have the humility and the foresight and the courage to go down there and say, listen, we got this one wrong. Why is it that you guys voted for Donald Trump? And Augie, I'm so glad you mentioned deep canvassing. This is part of the introspection that the Democratic Party needs to do. It's sitting down with people, asking them questions, and then shutting up and listening to why voters make the decisions that they made at the ballot box, what issues mattered most to them. And I believe that when we do that, no matter what race somebody is, or what class they come from, or whether they were born here in New Mexico, or came here later like I did, because they fell in love with the place, people understand that the Democratic Party is the party who listens to people, that doesn't take voters for granted just because of their ethnicity, or because of long-standing political traditions that we see throughout the state. So I would say it's having the humility and the foresight and the courage to go down there and listen to people and ask them why they voted the way that they voted.
Alrighty, I believe that concludes all the Adelante Progressive Caucus board members' questions. We'll go ahead and open it up
Chair,
to.
if I could, after we ask the audience if they have any questions, I would like to ask another question.
Sure thing. Are there any questions from the general audience? Please. Oh, I see Laura Lucero has raised her hand. Go ahead, Laura. And if anyone else, go ahead and use the hand raise icon just so I can see it better in case you're off to the side of my screen.
Okay, thank you. Laura Lucero with the Progressive Democrats of America, the Central New Mexico chapter. And I want to say how impressed I am with both candidates. And I think we need both of them in office. I'd like to vote for both of these men. My question is, and I'll preface it by saying that Progressive Democrats of America and other organizations nationally sent a letter recently to the new chair of the DNC, Ken Martin, and I will share a copy of that letter with all of you and with the two candidates so that you can see our concerns. And the takeaway message was, we recognize that there are some deficiencies in the Democratic Party, and we want to be a partner in helping the party strengthen itself for the future by looking both towards rural areas in our country and in the state, as well as working Americans. So I just wanted to preface my question by saying that that's a letter that I think both of you would be very interested in reading. And I think based on your comments, you probably both agree with the contents of that letter. And that went to Ken Martin, I think just a couple of days ago. I wasn't planning to ask you any questions, but as I was listening to you speak, I was surfing on the the New Mexico Democratic Party website, and I found something very new. So my question is, have you seen this? It's called No Talk Without Action Teams. I'll put a link of it in the chat. And so my question is, have you seen this? If you haven't, that's no big deal because I think it's brand new and I hadn't seen it until just a few minutes ago. And if you have seen it, what do you think of it? It looks to me, after skimming through it, like it's an introspective take on the Democratic Party after the recent election and what New Mexico Democratic Party is going to change in order to respond to the problems that we had with the last election. But I haven't read it myself. So my question is, have you seen this? And if you have, what do you think about it?
I don't remember who's first on this one.
I believe it's Cam's turn.
Okay. So Laura, thanks for being here. And I have seen it, and I got the notification via email. And you want to know something funny about that email? In the subject line, they had to put, "This is not a fundraising." So this speaks to pretty much what I've been saying all night long, is that the Democratic Party has I think a misguided focus on fundraising, and they know that they do because they had to put in their email, "This isn't a fundraising email." And on the contents of it, listen, I think it's very important to uh, hear directly from the people. This is a democracy. A democracy is made up of the people. But what if I don't have email? What if I am somebody who lives in an area that doesn't have broadband access? This is why I think it's important to show up everywhere all the time. And it's why I've been putting hundreds of miles on my car, crisscrossing the state to hear directly from people about what they want to see out of the Democratic Party. And those travels have taken me from, Santa Fe and Los Alamos all the way down to Roswell. They're going to take me to Hobbs. They're going to take me to Cruces. And so we need to honestly get offline and get back to what democracy was supposed to be about, which was about meeting people at the table, meeting people where they are. And that's something I do every day as a firefighter. My job is to meet people where they are, ask them what they need, and then do everything I can to make a difference. So it's a nice gesture, and I hope that this gesture results in a change of philosophy where we ask people for their ideas and not just for their money.
So Thank you, Cam. And thank you, Laura, for the question. So I actually have the plan pulled up here because it was in the process of printing before we came out because I'm a paper person. So I was going through it, and there are a lot of points in here that I find very interesting. I think for us within the Democratic Party, this still lends to what my platform has consistently been. And that's identifying systems, patterns, and gaps to make quality investments in infrastructure and training. And the reason that I say that is because the only way that we get to this end result, what they're hoping to do in bringing back Democratic voters, is if we have the ability to move the people, right? We have the ability to get the message out there. We have the ability to get everything to our respective partners, because the Democratic Party has so many different sub-organizations and affiliated organizations with it. So I think for me, in reading this, I agree with a lot of what's written in it. There are some areas that I have a little bit of variation with, but I think that my platform lends to how we get this work done, right? And I don't mean to pivot back to myself as a candidate, but as somebody who works in local government, I see a plan like this, and I'm like, okay, well, we're gonna have to raise money, sadly, to be able to pay for the things we need to achieve this goal. And in raising money, we have to be strategic in how we're making those investments. And that's where community feedback is so important, right? And that's why I've started the community feedback portion that I have at a kickoff at Indivisible Albuquerque, where I got 45 different sets of feedback about issues people are seeing, systems people are recognizing, and how we can develop the quality infrastructure to get this job done. But it can't stop there. It's going to happen at every event that I'm at, because as a local person, as a local government employee, that's how you start the whole planning process. Is you collect all the feedback, you run it up against the plan that you think is the good idea, and then you use that to supplement that plan and to create a more refined and specific plan to the issues we face. And so currently my plan is about 62 pages long, and I'm comparing them side by side on this. So in short, yes, I've seen the plan, and yes, I'm working towards real solutions for that. So thank you so much, Laura.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the general viewers? I don't see any hand icons or raised hands if you want to speak up, just in case.
Can I ask Cam to please share his email as well? We have Augustine's email.
I will do that right now.
Thank you.
If there are no other
Absolutely.
questions at the moment, Scotty, you had a second question.
Yes, I'm gonna do this, questions for the specific candidates, and I'm gonna start with Augie. As many of us know, you were the LGBTQ caucus chair, and you left before your term was up, and you left the Affirmative Action Committee before your term was up. What guarantees can you give us to let us know that if you start this term with these wonderful ideas, that you will be here at the end of your term in 27?
Yeah, totally. And Scotty, for the LGBTQI plus caucus, I left 7 days before the end of my term. So that term was 1 year. But in unison with that, it was because of the direction that the organizations wanted to go in, right? For the LGBTQI plus caucus, they had a set of ideas that they wanted to achieve. I had my set of ideas. And so I made the decision that it was better for me to leave right after the election rather than the week later at the end of my term. I did assist them in making that transition, and the organization is moving forward successfully. In addition to that, I've served through the entirety of my commissioner's term, and I've been working at this job consistently. I've served out every other contract that I've had with New Mexico House of Representatives, my contract with the Soil and Water Conservation Districts, and also with the Affirmative Action Committee. I left that committee because of the fact that there were explicit attacks on the young chair. And there was no workability for me to be able to get that committee to alleviate the stress within the organization to get the chair to organize with that respective committee. So I understand that I did leave early. However, there were specifics relating to why I did leave.
Okay. And Cam, you are new to New Mexico and you're a firefighter. What assurances can you give me and give us that you will fulfill your term let's say you get a better job in some other city or some other state. So I'd like to hear your response, please.
Well, Scotty, as you mentioned, I'm a firefighter. We work 48-hour shifts every single week, and I'm expected to do that job whether it's hard or easy. And so when someone's house is burning down and it's hot inside and I have all my gear on and my air bottle's low, I can't quit because if I quit, someone's house is going to burn down. Or if I'm in the back of the ambulance and I'm with somebody who's overdosed on opioids, I can't quit because if they do, I'll die. And so if I quit on the Democratic Party, this party will die if we don't have people who are committed to seeing through and rising above some of the internal disputes that we're, inevitably going to face when you have people who are different, who work with each other. I have to work with people every day who I don't see eye to eye with. That doesn't mean that on a scene I'm not expected to be cohesive or to get the job done. And so, like I said, the future of the Democratic Party depends on people who are committed to seeing through the vision of building this party beyond, fundraising or for people who are well off. We need to make sure that we have people who are committed to doing the hard work that goes into maintaining an organized political party. So, my term with the fire department, I could be there for the next 20, 30 years. And I will be here for the next 20, 30 years because I made a commitment to the people of Santa Fe County when they paid to put me through the very hard training. And they knew it was going to be hard. So I can't turn my back on the Democratic Party, and I won't turn my back on the Democratic Party.
Thank you. That's all, Carlton, that I have.
Have any of the other board members thought of a second question? Carol, I see your hand is up.
Yes. So my question is this. What do you envision your relationship to be with the staff of DPNM? And the reason why I ask this question is that the boundaries between staff and party business were very blurred with this previous DPNM administration. So what are your thoughts and what do you envision on what your relationship will be with the staff of DPNM? Thank you.
I believe it's Cam's turn.
So, as Augie mentioned, this is volunteer work, but I believe that we need to maintain standards of professionalism that any reasonable person could expect from somebody who works at a job like this. So, the job of the staff is to execute the vision of the officers, and if it doesn't have to do with party business, then we probably shouldn't be discussing it. And so, the staff at DPNM is paid. And part of when people send in their money is they're expecting the officers and the staff to do a good job, to be good stewards of the money they send in, and then to have that money sent back out to their communities to build good party infrastructure. So my relationship with the staff is going to be one where it's centrally focused on building and growing the Democratic Party and making sure that we speak to the needs of people all the time, both inside election years and out. And we're going to make sure that there's a level of accountability and transparency and interaction with the public so that if somebody feels like something untoward is going on, they can bring it to our attention. They don't have to be scared or feel like they can't come and talk to people who they voted for to take care of their party. So with public input and public discussion and hopefully public oversight, I want to make sure my relationship with the staff is professional and focused on executing party business and growing the Democratic Party.
So when it comes to staff, right, the Democratic Party of New Mexico structure is very much like the county commission, right? You have your executive board who makes the executive and legislative decisions of the party, and then you have your executive director who functions the administrative faculties of the party, who does the hiring, does the firing, does that type of work. And so one of the things that goes on in a county commission is that your commissioners do not direct staff. Your board members should not be directing staff. That should go through your executive director, right? That's why we delegate these things. And what that's intended to do is to prevent undue influence from, in that sense, the commissioners. And that should also happen with the board members. We are elected, so we shouldn't be influencing staff to do things unless we've set out a plan and the executive director is ready to execute upon that plan. But what we also have to do is pay attention to the union contract that is available and in place to protect our employees. I take that contract very seriously, and I think that there are rules related to human resources that are in place to protect our staff. And we have to take those rules and regulations seriously, whether that's in state statute or set out within the internal procedures of the Democratic Party. And I feel that there was a failing because I have friends who were staff, and there was a lot of trials and tribulations that went on in the sense of decorum, respect, and honesty. And those are things that I'm dedicated to making sure get done, and that we hold the executive director, whoever it is, accountable to that union contract, to human resources, and to making sure that the staff are doing their jobs effectively and doing the jobs that we're paying them to do, but also at the same time making sure that it's a workplace environment that's hospitable for everybody. In working for Bernalillo County, I'll tell you, I have one of the best work environments. We just hired on a girl who's 26 years old, and because of the way that the policies are set out in the county, we have such a good working environment. And, that's why I've been able to serve out my contracts with the Soil and Water Conservation District, where I served for 7 years. That's why I was also able to work for the New Mexico House of Representatives the 2 times and serve out the entirety of those contracts. And that's also why I have the dedication to serve out, hopefully, this term and the next term for my county commissioner, should he decide to seek re-election. Not saying that I'll be partisan in that election either, because it's my job to remain neutral.
Thank you for that. I guess I want to add a follow-up question, just to clarify my first question. And what that question is that from my understanding, and I hope my fellow executive board members and the audience hold me accountable if I get the facts wrong, because facts are wrong, that completely changes the story. My understanding is that DPNM staff were a part of committees that SCC had been on. And that to me is, personally, that's a conflict of interest. So that's what I mean by boundaries and that sort of thing with the staff. When it comes to those committees and things like that, what are your, I am so sorry. Gosh, I am so sorry. What are the ethical guidelines that you have foreseen for your relationship with the staff, and what you envision their involvement with different committees and things like that? That hopefully that clarifies what I was trying to ask in the first place, without having to be like, what happened?
Yeah, I think that's me first, right, Kim?
Yeah.
Or did you go first, Lester? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll tell again, I'm drawing from my experience with the county commission, right? As the staffer, I am not permitted to sit on any committees that the county has as a staffer. That I can proxy for my boss, but I am not permitted to be a voting member of any of these boards or to be appointed to them. And so for me, from DPNM, I see the role as staff is to facilitate meetings of the committees, but not to be a voting member. Because I agree with you. I think that there is a little bit of a vested interest in the outcome of certain things, particularly when it relates to rules, right? When it relates to rules, when it relates to judiciary, when it relates to platforms and resolutions, we do not want any sense of impropriety. And so I think that staff should be working to facilitate these committees, be working to, help the committee get its work done, or proxy for somebody who is a voting member, should that be a decision of the SCC to be done. But that ethical line has to be there, and it has to be very, very clear and resolute for the Democratic Party.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Augie. I mean, I think that, I mean, as a county employee, yeah, I'm also not allowed to sit on any boards that are under the purview of the county commission. And I think that practice is a good one. And if it's not at DPNM, it should be. Because yes, there is an ethical conflict, and there are instances where someone serving on a committee could potentially benefit them should a certain vote go a certain way. And so I think it's just best practice to keep those pots separate and try to, you know, be upstanding and ethical and have integrity, so that we're showing the people who put their faith and trust in the Democratic Party, we're going to hold ourselves to the same standards that they would hold themselves to.
I thought of a second question. Is there anyone from the general audience who has a question? If not, I'll go ahead. So probably my personal number one soapbox is ranked choice voting. I personally believe ranked choice voting would solve 90% of our political problems, if implemented nationwide in all elections. And I could get into that another time, why I think that. And recently, DPNM passed ranked choice voting, and I use air quotes because they chose a version of ranked choice voting called board account voting, which essentially is ranked choice voting with extra steps. And my concern with this, and I did bring it up in the forum when it was up for a vote, that it's problematic. If this has changed, please let me know. But the proposal was, proposed revision, Article 1, Section 5, 5.4.4.3, determining the weighted value for each ranked choice. Quote, the election administration team has discretion to determine the weighted value for first choice votes, second choice votes, third choice votes, and so on. My concern is I believe this is an opportunity for shenanigans, for lack of a better term. Whoever that election administrative team will be, from my concern, could say the first vote is going to be worth 10 points, 20 points, 30 points, and any number. And the second choice vote is going to be worth 2 points, and the third choice vote will be 1 point. And essentially, you'll have first past the post voting all over, just with extra steps. So my question is, for whoever is the next vice chair, can you guarantee, well, and even if the election team doesn't arbitrarily value those votes, I'm kind of concerned with it as it is, might give preference to the number one vote unfairly. And then we have first past the post again. So can you guarantee that if you're the next vice chair, that we somehow try to make sure that this board account ranked choice voting is as fair as possible, so that it works closest to what ranked choice voting is intended?
I think this one's me. And if you
Yes.
ask me, I think that uh, if it takes a PhD to understand, which is, it kind of sounds like what the board account sounds like, then we probably shouldn't be doing it. And this has been a perennial issue with the Democratic Party. We say stuff in 100 words when we should try to say it in as few words as possible. And with ranked choice voting, I believe that the classical method, the most widely understood and known, is the method we should probably go to. And once we start delving into these really complicated and nuanced and meticulous ways of counting votes, it causes people to check out. Their eyes glaze over. They don't understand what you're talking about. So, I mean, I would oppose it for those reasons alone, because it seems like it's making democracy a little bit less accessible. But someone in the comments said that it changed. I can't speak to that. But ideally, we would just do ranked choice voting as it's, commonly understood, where you have your first place, or your first choice, second choice, third choice, so on. And then as the voting goes on, the votes of, the person who came in last place, their votes get distributed out. I think that way is the easiest to understand. Therefore, since it's the easiest way, that's the way we should probably lean towards doing.
I think Carolyn had an update to that, and I think I may have the same update. So Carolyn, do you want to tell us how it changed, I believe?
Well, Augustine, I'd like to hear your answer, and then Carlene can
Okay,
ask your
so
question and correct me if needed.
So from my understanding, the points that were allotted, because it is a point system with the board account, you are very correct in that, but I do believe that the points are allocated by the number of positions that are being ran for. So like if there's 3 people running, the first position's worth 3, the next one's worth 2, the next one's worth 1. And so there's an automatic tie to the number of positions. There's the person administering the election doesn't get to decide anymore. But I will agree that I think that going to a traditional sense of ranked choice voting is optimal. I do believe that the SEC did vote to approve that board account election system, though. Is that correct? Okay. So for me, I went through the process whenever I ran for DNC delegate. I seen that like it went into the electronic system. The system produced whoever the points were, and then it was ran through a like a board of elections whenever you get the results, and then those results are available to the public. So for me, I think it does get a little bit complicated. However, I do believe with this rule change, it does ensure that the system is fair and honest. Just because there is a rule requiring that that number be associated with the number of positions that are being ran for.
Carlene, you have a question, and if you want to correct me, I'm all for it.
Well, actually, Colton, what you're talking about was changed during the process, and Augie is correct. And I think if you read the current rules, you would see now that they use integers for their scoring system. There's no 1.24. Augie explained it perfectly, correctly. And yes, whether that's the best ranked choice of voting or not, well, I know one of the objections to other types of ranked choice voting was the fact that often you have to have multiple elections. And that's one thing that they were trying to avoid. But that's not what my comment is tonight. But I just feel like that kind of stuff, it's really up to the FCC, and they can bring forth a rules proposal anytime they want. And if we've gotten away from Appendix A, and if we want to improve our ranked choice voting, I mean, we have a mechanism to do that. It's the rules, and we can submit a rules request change and vote on it. Speaking of voting and SCC, I've been on the CCC for some time now, and basically the SCC is operating somewhat as just a rubber stamp. When an issue comes up, the SCC gets a ballot and we vote based on sometimes very limited or convoluted information, especially if it has something to do with the Judicial Committee. But so for the gentleman here, I would be interested in how you think you're going to distribute power and leadership throughout the party. Because what I observe is that there's been attempts to centralize control within the party, within the officers and the executive staff. And I do not believe that that's the way that our party should be operating. So do you have ideas about how to distribute that leadership and decision-making and vision setting throughout the party, especially through the SCC, rather than just having, here's something to vote on, boom, you're done. And really there's no, for a state central committee, our state central committee is not acting at all as the governing authority of the party. That is being handled by the staff. So I would just like your thoughts. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here.
Is
I
that
believe
me
it's
or you?
Augie's.
Oh, sorry.
It's your turn, Augie. Yeah.
Okay, sorry guys. I hate to interrupt and I apologize. Colton. So for me, I think whenever we're talking about an organization like this with the Democratic Party, when you have SCC members, first off, information is power. And we have to make sure that we are getting things out in a timely fashion. In working for the government, we have to follow the Open Meetings Act. We have a required deadline by the time information has to be out. And so having documentation dictating when we have to get information out. So that way there is a hard rule. So that way the SCC has the information and can digest it to make an educated decision and have quality, robust debate over these issues is very important. And so I think that the notice portion of it and enshrining it in rule will help get the SEC to make educated choices about these types of policy changes and rule changes. Added to this, also including the SEC members within what the Democratic Party is doing, right? I feel like when we get on the SEC, because I've been on the SEC since 2019, we get elected, we're asked to come to these conventions, and that's about it. We're not asked to volunteer. We're not asked to help build our party. We are just told that we're supposed to vote, and that's our job. And that's not something that we should be doing as a Democratic Party, because we have an untapped resource within that SCC to be helping our county parties, to be helping our wards, to be helping our precincts in rural and urban places. And so we have to take it from being a top-down type organization to being a flat organized organization. And one example of this, and this is just like a small thing, was when I ran for the House of Representatives, I had members of my community coming up and saying, "Oh, representative, representative," even though I wasn't elected yet. And the first thing I told them is, I'm not representative. I'm Augie. I am a human being just like you, here to do a job. I'm not coming into this because of the fact that there's a hierarchy to it. I am here to get work done. And so we have to conduct ourselves in that vein, that we are all here just filling a role, coming together to build community, get Democrats elected, and to make sure that everybody has the information in a timely manner and that they're able to digest that information and act upon it collectively. And so that's my take on it.
I think when it comes to having a political party that's able to build popular support, we need to understand that change doesn't happen from the top down, it happens from the bottom up. And, you know, I supported Bernie Sanders in 2016 and 2020. And this is something he really hit hard on, is that people who weren't necessarily a part of the political process were joining because he understood we needed a fundamental change in our philosophy. And I believe that the Democratic Party is due for some change in philosophy. And so when it comes to decision making, you know, the SEC members are duly elected from members of their community. And, you know, throughout this campaign, I've had the opportunity to go see democracy happen at the lowest level possible, which is ward meetings. And it's people who are of the same neighborhood coming together to figure out who they want to be their ward chair, ward vice chair. And then that sort of grassroots approach is supposed to make its way up to the Democratic Party, and that experience of being somebody who is a leader on the ground level is supposed to inform our experience and our decision making as officers at the top. And so, you know, the SEC shouldn't purely just be people who vote on stuff. They should also be people who, you know, are willing to disseminate information. Same with county parties. We need to make sure that they have every tool in the toolbox available to them to get out information to keep people in the know, so that we make a process that seems very arcane and inaccessible, more welcoming, so that people want to participate. And if we're having a party where the decision making and the thought process is just happening from the top down, I don't believe that's sustainable. We've got to make sure we devolve power and decision making back down to the ground where it's closest to the people.
See, Ms. Wanda Harrison has a question.
Hello, everyone. I apologize. I'm not going to turn on my camera because I'm not feeling well and it will be a much too ugly sight that I do not want to subject you all to. And this question is sort of directed to Mr. Montoya, but I would love to hear Mr. Crawford's answer also. Mr. Montoya mentioned that we need robust debate. And the robust debate, I believe, should be through the FCC because they are the governing body of the Democratic Party of New Mexico. And I fear that far too many people don't understand the weight of that. And they just say, okay, well, who do I vote for? And they just vote without thought processes. But back to the robust debate. How do we have a robust debate when we vote electronically and our debate is a 2-week online comment period? How on earth is that a robust debate? And it, in my reading, violates the Robert's Rules of Order, which are supposed to be our governing thing. And the chair is supposed to issue the question. And how is the chair issuing the question in an electronic forum for 2-week online comment period? I think it's very unfair. And you just made me think, is there a solution for that? I don't have one, but I hope somebody else does.
Yeah, I think that
Point of order. I know it was directed to Augie, but it is Cam's turn. I'll let you two figure out who wants to go first.
I would love to hear from Mr. Crawford also. I just thought it might be a little unfair because he didn't in a roundabout way, he talked about debate. So if he wants to go forward first, I'm happy to hear from him first.
that's your call, Cam.
Yeah, I'll go first. So when it comes to making sure that we foster that sort of discussion, again, I mentioned sometimes we have to be willing to go offline. And one of my biggest criticisms of DPNM is that for too long we have been phoning it in, we've been zooming it in, and instead of using some of the vast resources that people have been so gracious to give us, we have instead decided to set up a webcam, like you mentioned, and then have these really convoluted policy discussions and debates, as you mentioned before, with not a lot of input or really input from people who are expected to make these sorts of decisions. And so I mentioned it in my interview with Sarah MacArthur. It would take nothing for the Democratic Party to say, hey, listen, Bernalillo County SEC members, this is an issue that we're going to be debating. Let's all meet at this place. We've rented out a space for people to come together in person so that they can have that robust debate and discussion. And similarly, we should do that in places where it's not always easy to get to, or maybe Democrats aren't always invited. So we need to be willing to, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I understand it's easy and convenient to do things like Zoom. But ultimately, COVID for the most part is long gone. And therefore we should make every effort possible to do in-person meetings. And then make sure that people have access to every piece of information that they need to make an informed decision on these very important issues that are going to affect how the party operates here in New Mexico.
Dean?
Cool. So for me, I very much agree that it has to go to an in-person platform. One of the things that I think that we have the opportunity to capitalize on our county parties, right? They have monthly meetings and we have the ability to show up because every month they should or do have their monthly meetings. We should, as the executive team from the Democratic Party, reach out to our county party chairs and say, hey, I need you to get your SEC members to your monthly meeting so we can sit down and have a conversation about this. How is this going to affect your community? How does this rule impact your ability to organize in your community? How does this process, does this procedure? And so I think this is one thing that me and Cam do see eye to eye on, is this in-person meeting. But I think that there are ways that we can economize how we do it, so that way we're not having to get together a separate meeting and try to get people to that separate meeting when we already have a focal point with all of our county parties, our caucuses, our affiliated organizations, where we can already meet them where they are. And so I think utilizing that time more efficiently with our county parties and having that strong partnership is the way that we have this robust debate, and then also taking in feedback at the same time. So giving people an online platform where they can submit that public comment, but also having those in-person options in community with those people where they are already meeting. And so that would be my response to that, Wanda. I'm more than happy to follow up if you have additional questions via email or phone.
Just to make a quick comment on that, I do miss the in-person meetings. And I like, as a fan of watching House of Commons, I like when it gets a little rowdy. Carol, you have another question?
Yeah, thank you. Bringing up the SEC meeting, remember with, what was that meeting? I think in December with SEC, and a parliamentarian from some place was brought in, and that was difficult because it was somebody that wasn't one of us. So my question is that when it comes to parliamentarians or other things like that, what are your thoughts of investing and looking into the resources within DPNM itself? Like, would you be interested in looking for a parliamentarian or somebody who is knowledgeable? Oh no, I made Augie run away.
Oh, he's
Yeah, like how surely, because our dearly beloved and Miss Secretary, he would have made an excellent parliamentarian. We have the resources within the party. What are your thoughts of looking for the resources within the party to run things more efficiently, so we don't have to outsource all these people?
Yeah, I think that
Okay, cool. So
yeah, August.
okay, thank you, Colton. Thank you, Cam. So first and foremost, there's a reason I brought this out. This is a big book of Robert's Rules of Order. I have been reading it and I have been apprising myself of it. In addition to the fact that I'm open to taking there's an association of parliamentarians. That guy who actually came in to do that, he's from McIntosh, New Mexico. And so I've communicated with him to take the training myself, because this is part of that training that I've been speaking to that we need to be investing in. So that way all of our county party chairs are familiar with parliamentary order. So that way they're familiar with Robert's Rules of Order, because this is part of the procedure. So for me personally, I think that that's something that DPNM should be investing in. And this is part of what our dollars should go to, is to train all of our partners on how this process works. Because you're very right. We can do this internally. We don't have to spend and spend and spend and spend on resources that we can just invest in here, because that's capital we can continue to grow off of, because then it teaches young people, right? Even with the Young Democrats of New Mexico, for example, which I'm a member of and a previous secretary to, is we can train them to do that, to then build the bench of leaders and parliamentarians within the Democratic Party. And that's how we maintain decorum. And that's how we maintain, respect amongst each other, is relying on a consistent process.
I think that part of it's not officially in their role, but the secretary of DPNM, I think, would be a great person to deploy out to some of these places that don't see Democratic leadership until it's an election season. So part of what I would ask them to do is say, hey, listen, are you willing to go out to some of these far-flung communities and help run a meeting? And hopefully they would be, because again, our mission is to help build the Democratic Party And we all love the Democratic Party, and so hopefully we'd be willing to go the extra mile to make sure that we can reach every voter possible and foster that kind of debate and discussion that's going to make our party stronger. But additionally, one thing that I've noticed at these ward meetings is that, some of them have issues finding, secretaries and treasurers, but they also have issues finding ward chairs and vice chairs. And so part of addressing that is, again, re-engaging people into the political process and saying, hey, listen, if you want to get involved, one of the ways that you can get involved is you can become a secretary for your ward or for your county party. And once we're able to sort of grow and foster these sorts of people running for these secretary positions, we can offer them the training necessary in order to be competent to, be a good parliamentarian, keep good notes, and be good with taking notes, so that we can be apprised of what was discussed at these meetings. So I think that the answer is within us, and that's sort of a broader point. It's like, we see all this stuff going on at the national level. The answer is within us. And with regard to finding parliamentarians, the answer is within us. We got to find people who want to get involved. They just don't know where to put their talent or their resources to. I think asking them to be a parliamentarian or secretary for their local party, if they have one, it would be a great place to start.
Just a note, former DPNM Secretary Pam Herndon would teach Robert's Rules classes. I attended one once at Erna Ferguson Library. Maybe DPNM could hold this. I've wanted to take that class forever. I'll finish nursing school first, but then I'd love to take a parliamentarian class. We are coming up on 8 o'clock. I think this would probably be a good time for a 1-minute closing statement. Since Cam had the first word, Augie, would you like to have the last word? Just a quick kind of 1-minute closing, and then we'll say goodnight.
So me first, Colton?
Oh, Cam first, and then Augie, you'll have.
Well, thank you all so much for being here and for taking some time out of your evening to hear from us and hear about what we're going to do to help turn around the Democratic Party and make it a party of the grassroots and of the working class again. I'm a working class man running to rebuild a working class party. We are a party of union members. I'm a union member. We used to be the party of people who make under $50,000 a year. I make under $50,000 a year. We used to be the decisive party for people of color. I'm a person of color. We've got to do everything we can to bring people back to this party. And I believe it starts with having the courage of our convictions to expand our efforts and outreach beyond fundraising and to go to people and say, what do you need in your community to bring people back to the table? And again, I believe that starts with showing the Democratic Party can be about service. We can be about making sure your community has what it needs and that we fill those gaps that you see in these communities so that we bring people back into the fold. And then additionally, we've got to educate people on what the Democratic Party is up to. And I believe that when we deliver for people, both inside and outside the halls of government, through our service, through our education, through providing people with the resources that they need to build a strong, robust, uncorrupted local party, we'll bring people off the sidelines. There's Democrats all across New Mexico who are waiting on us to come and knock on their door so that we can bring them back into the fold. If you like what you've heard tonight, go to camfornmdems.com and sign up to get updates. And again, if you have any questions, you can call me, text me, 505-231-1349, and we can have a nice discussion about how we're going to make the Democratic Party a working people's party again. Thank you so much.
And Augie?
Well, buenos tardes, everybody. I'm a born and raised Nuevo Mexicano, as I've consistently said. And so I was literally born and raised in this state. And the reason that matters is because we need somebody who understands how to get underneath every stone and leave nothing left unturned. And in being born and raised here, I've ran cross country or hunted or been a part of every community. And so it's not just a fact of visiting and a fact of speechifying, it's a fact of life. We constantly complain that we want to keep our New Mexican youth here, and I'm asking for you to give me the opportunity to do that, to stay here and invest my talents in the state that built me, the state that made me, and the state that made the generations that came before me. And so I ask to earn your support, not just because of that, but because of the experience that I bring as well, and because of my dedication to service. So please feel free to check out my website, www.anm4nm.com, or give me a call at 505-620-4539. Thank you.
Well, thank you both so much. I thought this was a wonderful conversation. We'll put this up on the website for the people who couldn't attend tonight, and so they can reach out to you. We'll put your information up as well. Thank you all. Thank you, Adelante
Yes, thank you.
Caucus, and thank you to everyone who visited us this evening. Everyone's welcome to come back in about a month. We're going to try to have the chair candidates speak, and we'll go from there. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Take it easy.